Good morning and welcome to the Coach Approach Weekend Edition. I'm Brett Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, how are you? Doing well, I hope.
Doing fantastic, man. We had football in London this morning. Catching up on the Vikings game right now. Saints just scored. Hopefully, you guys took advantage of Taysom Hill being tight end eligible, as he just goes in for a touchdown run. So there we go, man. We're off and running this morning.
We're off and running. Well, let's get off and running with our picks, our start sits, our inactives. Let's get right into it. Cleveland Browns 2-1 at Atlanta Falcons. First, the inactives for the Browns. You got Kellen Mond, you've got Michael Woods the second, and you've got a few offensive linemen and defensive linemen. One of the defensive linemen, and this may help for the Falcons' running game and passing attack, is Myles Garrett. After suffering the car accident earlier this week, he is inactive for this game. For the Falcons, a couple linebackers and offensive linemen. But, the name that pops out for me is Bryan Edwards. A lot of people thought he would get an opportunity in that depleted wide receiver room for the Falcons. Here we are, week 4, and he is out. Start and sits for this game. Coach, why don't you kick that off for us?
Yeah, so, some of these are going to be pretty obvious. And Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Falcons give up 109 rushing yards a game. This is the best rushing attack in the NFL. They lead in rushing attempts behind one of the best offensive lines. So Chubb leads the NFL with 341 yards rushing with 5.5 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. You're not starting not starting anybody in the Cleveland backfield on any given week. And then Amari Cooper, who's come on over the last couple of games, he's certainly built some rhythm with Jacoby Brissett, so I like him this week. For the Falcons, Kyle Pitts, he finally had his breakout game for 2022 last week. A lot of concerns about him, but look, where you drafted him at, how you acquired him, if you have Kyle Pitts on your roster, you're playing Kyle Pitts. This is a no-brainer. Drake London, 16 catches, 214 yards, a couple touchdowns on 25 targets already this season. He continues to show why he was the first wide receiver off the board. And then Cordell Patterson, it's unbelievable at his age of 29 or whatever it was when he got unlocked with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. But Cordell Patterson has taken over as the RB1 in that offense. He's the RB6 overall. So those are the guys that I'm starting this week. I think most of those are pretty obvious. I don't think there's any surprises there.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's a surprise if you went back to 2018 and said, hey, in the next 3 years, you're going to get Cordell Patterson as one of the top fantasy running backs in the league. That would be a surprise. But today, not so much.
Absolutely.
How about the sits, Coach? How about the sits? Who are we sitting in this one?
So I don't love either quarterback here. Jacoby Brissett's averaging just 198 yards passing per game in a run-heavy offense. He's projecting just 22 touchdowns on the year, which I believe be a career high for him. So we could argue that he probably will not maintain that pace in that offense. And then Marcus Mariota, love the talent, loved him coming out of Oregon. Felt like he got kind of a raw deal in Tennessee. So I love the fact he's getting an opportunity to play again. But Falcons averages 213 yards passing, and he's only got 17 touchdown passes, one touchdown pass basically per game, which is 17 touchdown pace for this season. He does have the 2 rushing touchdowns, but he's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. So I'm not real high on Marcus Mariota this week either.
All right. We always make our picks against the spread. And so far on the year, I've got you by 3 games. I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. We're got a little needle in you a bit. So let's go. We got the spread being the Browns are favored by 1.5. And with that spread, I'm going to go ahead and take I got the Browns. I feel like they're at home. I feel like they've got a better opportunity with the rushing attack. And I just think that spread's not big enough for them to be the home team. And you know what? They're not the home team.
I touched on it with who I was starting. I think it's the ground game.
Yeah.
No, they're not. But I know that I'm like you. I've got the Browns certainly with that rushing attack. What Amari Cooper's done, which Jacoby Brissett, David Njoku had his breakout game last week. I just think there's enough offensive fire there that I don't think Atlanta's going to be able to keep up. So I've got the Browns with them giving up 1.5.
All right, moving on to one of our favorite games on the docket today. That's the Buffalo Bills at 2-1 at the Baltimore Ravens. Here we go for the inactives first for the Bills. You got Jake Kamara, wide receiver, tight end Tommy Sweeney, defensive tackle Ed Oliver, who's been a force for them this year. That's may help the Ravens rushing attack a little bit. But for the inactives for the Ravens, you got Ronnie Stanley and you've got running back Kenyon Drake. Not much that it really moves the needle much. As far as start and sit, who you like in this one, Coach?
Well, I think you obviously start Josh Allen. I won't spend a whole lot of time on him. I think that's self-explanatory. I think you can say the same thing about Stephon Diggs, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews. Those are all must starts. I mean, this is a game with Josh Allen. You've got the QB2. You've got Stephon Diggs, who's the overall wide receiver 1. You've got Lamar Jackson, who's the overall QB1. You got Mark Andrews, who's the overall tight end 1. The just two offenses that are loaded. You do have some concerns about the weather there. I think if it gets to be a high wind game, I think that favors the Ravens in that rushing attack. But those are your obvious starts. I don't have anybody outside of that I feel really, really confident in starting. So I think that kind of trends us into who our sits are. But those are my starts for this week.
Yeah, I'll tell you what Mark Andrews is doing this year, again, after what he did last year, I mean, there's really not much debate anymore who is the tight end 1. Let's talk about sits. You don't like running backs in this game, do you, Coach?
No, I don't. I think Devin. It's funny too, right? Because if the weather permits, we're going to see more of the rushing attack. But with the Bills, you've got Devin Singletary, who I think everybody was a little bit surprised the amount of volume he was getting in Week 1, and James Cook has just struggled to be relevant. But he's the clear RB1, I think, in Buffalo at this point after the first 3 games. But he's carried the ball just 23 times for 80 yards, but he's only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. So there's some concerns there with the efficiency. I think what's been surprising is his usage in the passing game over James Cook, because many believe that's why you went out and drafted James Cook. But it's been Devin Singletary, and if you're talking about a high win game, there's a chance there in the passing game there. But just what they've done on the ground, it's not enough. J.K. Dobbins, it's just I'm not ready for him coming up that major injury to step into an RB1, getting that type of RB1, what we would consider to be elite volume. I don't think he's there yet. So I still think that offense is going to run through Lamar Jackson. So don't feel confident starting any running back in one of those teams. And then Rashad Bateman, I'm not real high this week. I think this is a game that Mark Andrews, especially if it's high winds, that short to intermediate areas of the field, I think can do some damage. I don't hate Rashad Bateman this week. He's just not a guy that is necessarily a start for me if I've got better options. But if I get it, if you drafted him at what your roster looks like, you're probably playing him.
What's weird about Bateman is a lot of people thought he was going to be more of the chain mover, the guy that was going to be making a lot of 13 and 14-yard outs, kind of like the Michael Thomas role when he took over this year. And yet he's doing a lot of the same things that we saw out of Marquise Brown in that offense, where they're utilizing almost predominantly to stretch the field. I kind of expected more volume. So it has been a little – you love to see the big plays he's getting out of them, but you'd like to see more volume. The spread, we've got the Bills at -3.
Yeah.
Coach, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think you're dead right on the usage. I think I felt the same way, and I think that's if you take those big touch catches away from Week 1 and 2 from Rashad Bateman, his numbers are even worse. But maybe this is the game with weather conditions that they start getting more slant routes, start running more hitch routes, start running more shallow routes, to start getting him active underneath and let his speed take over after the catch. So hopefully we'll see that this week.
All right, so Bills at -3, games on the road at the Ravens. So who do you like in this one, Coach?
God, it's such a tough one, man. And I go back and forth. You and I talked about this before we went on the air, and I could easily flip my pick here, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to think that, Josh Allen, and coming off a tough loss last week, just ran out of time. It reminded me of the Dallas Cowboys and the Niners in the playoff game, and Josh Allen just ran out of time. And I think that's a big motivator for him going into this week. I think the Ravens are absolutely rolling, especially Lamar Jackson, but I think the Bills find a way with Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, and Gabe Davis to find a way to win this game. So I've got the Bills -3. This game could easily be a push, come down to a field goal. And if you bet on the Bills at 3 and obviously they end up winning by 3 points, it's a push. But I know you're a Ravens guy here, and I get it.
I wouldn't say I'm a Ravens guy, but I'm certainly a Ravens guy today. I feel like the weather is more conducive to Lamar Jackson. And not that, heck, if anyone was more prepared to play for the Buffalo Bills, it was Josh Allen in his time in Wyoming. I mean, you talk about cold weather games. He had plenty of them as a Cowboy in Wyoming. But regardless, I'm going to the Ravens. Moving on to the Washington Commanders at 1-2 at the Dallas Cowboys 2-1. Washington inactives. You've got no one of significance. You got Sam Howell. He's not expected to do anything right now anyways. And you've got a tight end named Cole Turner. Cowboy inactives. Obviously Dak's still there, but it's disheartening, I guess, if you're a Jalen Tolbert truther. Once again, he's inactive after he got into the game last week. So not sure what that means, but let's go ahead and get into the start and sits for both sides in this one, Coach.
Yeah, I think on Tolbert, that's just Michael Gallup being back. Tolbert had a nice little catch last week, but then he also alligator armed a deep ball, and I think that was something they looked at and said, "Hey, you got to make those plays." But starts for me is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I think it's easy to say Tony Pollard this week. I think how they're using him and Zeke Elliott, the combined, they had 30 carries last week, really involved. Like to see that. So I think if you got either one of those guys, you're probably playing them as well. But CeeDee Lamb to me is a guy that had his breakout game of the 22 season last week. Eight big catches, had the big touchdown late in the game to secure the win there. Had targets last week, so he's been targeted 34 times. Volume, the volume is there. If you go back and look at week one, some of those throws from Dak were a little bit off, and he struggled a little bit to separate. But I like CeeDee this week.
I'll tell you what, has there ever been a game where you went from CeeDee Lamb is not going to be anything after the drop to 30, 40, 50 minutes, maybe an hour later, the same people on Twitter now saying CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. I mean, what a turnaround in one game. Sits in this game. Who do you got sitting out in this one?
I was one of those guys, by the way.
Yeah, no, I remember the tweet.
I've got Carson Wentz. Yeah, Carson Wentz sitting out this week. For me, if I've got better options, going to play him. I understand he got off to a really good start the first couple of weeks, but if you look at what the Eagles did to him last week, with the pressures, the Dallas Cowboys have lead the NFL with 13 sacks. They're second in the NFL with 42 pressures. Carson Wentz did not look good under pressure last week. He's always struggled from the mental aspect when he gets happy feet, and I don't see it. So I'm just not real comfortable with him. He also fumbled the ball twice last week. Continues to have just insane amount of turnovers over the course of his career. And then Michael Gallup, I think it's a game too early. It's his first game back. I do think the Cowboys took their time and didn't rush him back and week two or even, which I thought was a great move on their part. So I'm not ready to put Michael Gallup in my lineup yet. I want to see offensively with Cooper Rush what that looks like. I do like the idea of Gallup hopefully, being able to take a little bit of the pressure off CeeDee Lamb. I think teams are going to have a tough time rolling coverage to CeeDee Lamb, even Michael Gallup one-on-one. I think if they do that, you'll see them attack that. But I'm not confident starting him on his first game back.
Who do you like in this game, though, Coach? Because you got to start getting some picks right here so you can catch up to me. But who do you like with the Cowboys having a -3 spread?
I still think it's the Cowboys. I think the way they're defensively right now, I think makes all the difference in the world. We talked about the quarterback sacks and pressures, giving up 176 yards passing per game right now. And for added emphasis, that includes Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, who they played in weeks 1 and 2. So this is a defense it's humming right now. They've got guys that are stepping up, even their 1 technique, 3 technique, and the D line playing well right now. So I just don't trust Washington's, gonna week. So I think Dallas is on a run right now. Thank God, because you asked me this 2 weeks ago and Dak got hurt. I thought the season was over. So Cooper Rush played
you weren't
well.
alone. There were a lot of people, and I couldn't see it, but a lot of people thinking that they were going to now have a 3-14 type of season. And would they actually consider taking a quarterback with their first round pick next year after signing Dak to that big contract? But I'm right there with you. I've been very impressed with the way Cooper has run the offense, been very impressed with the fact that they're becoming more balanced offensively. And then what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball has been pretty impressive. So, yeah, I'm right there with you with the Cowboys. Moving on, Seattle Seahawks 1-2 at the Detroit Lions. For whatever reason, there were no inactives listed. However, we know we're not going to see DeAndre Swift. We know we're not going to see Amon-Ra St. Brown, and we don't think we're going to see DJ Chark. So who are we starting in this game, Coach?
It's funny because all those guys out, Jared Goff to me was a guy that we would put as a must start if those guys are all playing. Now that those 3 guys are all out, I think it comes down to what they get out of Jamal Williams. So I think it becomes a must start now with Swift out. I think he gets a chance of a role in the passing game now. And but now Jared Goff's a sit for me, right? Whereas he may have been a start. And then TJ Hawkinson is a guy from receiving standpoint, and Josh Reynolds that reap the benefit of those pass catchers all being out. So TJ Hawkinson to me is a must start. I think if you have Josh Reynolds on your roster, depending on who you have in the wide receiver spots, is a great play this week in a flex spot. So those are the guys that I'm looking for this week in that game.
Sits. You don't like that Seattle
And no, I
backfield,
don't
do
have
you?
anybody from Seattle. I don't. I don't this week. I think Penny had the first game of the year. I think everybody in the off, you had your Kenneth Walker guys, and then you had your Rashad Penny guys. There wasn't a whole lot of guys that were in that happy medium area. And what you're kind of seeing is Kenneth Walker slowly start getting put into that offense. But Penny's only averaging 10 carries a game for 47 yards. I mean, it's not like he's setting the world on fire. He's certainly not playing the way that he did down the stretch last year. He's yet to find the end zone. He's only been targeted 4 times. So there's nothing about Rashad Penny that gets me excited, especially now that Kenneth Walker's starting to get a little bit more involved. And then Kenneth Walker, after missing week 1, he's only totaled 7 carries for 29 yards. And his longest run of the season was 21. So that means you've got 6 carries for 8 yards outside of that 1 carry. So there's nothing there with, again, Kenneth Walker that excites me either. That's not an offensive line that we're used to seeing out there in Seattle from 4 and 5 years ago. So I just don't have confidence in that rushing attack whatsoever. And I don't trust the pass catchers as long as Geno Smith is the quarterback. We've seen DK Metcalf. Love his talent, but he's not getting the volume there that he needs to be relevant. There are not enough options in the opportunities in the red zone for him to take advantage of his skill set. So
Spread. They got the Lions at -4. I'll tell you what, I'm going to make my pick first. I think with all the inactives for the Lions, I think Seattle is doing exactly what Pete Carroll wants them to do. May not be fun for fantasy football managers, but I'll tell you what, I like Seahawks kind of surprising the injured riddled Lions this week.
yeah, I mean, both teams on the defensive side of the ball certainly aren't very exciting. I mean, they're giving up a lot of yards. They're giving up some scores. I just feel like even with Swift, St. Brown, Shark all out this week, I expect the Lions to cover at home. I think the tough pick, if this spread was more 2.5, 3 points, I think it's a little bit easier to call. But I feel like that extra point makes it a little bit more difficult to cover. But I'm going to trust the Lions with Dan Campbell find a way to pull this one out and cover the spread.
Moving on to a team that's been struggling. Hopefully they can get it back, but they're still suffering from some injuries. That's the Los Angeles Chargers at 1-2, at the Houston Texans 0-2-1. Chargers, their inactives have been released. They're still going to be without Keenan Allen. They're going to be without tight end Donald Parham
Yep.
Jr. And if you drafted this guy, I know in my one quarterback rookie draft, he went at pick 10. That's rookie running back Isaiah Spiller. He's once again another inactive week for him. For the Texans, you got tight end Brevin Jordan. He will be out. And then you also have tight end Pharaoh Brown. He's also out. But that takes us to the start and sits. Let's go with the starts first, Coach.
So the only guy that I've got that I'm starting this week. Now, again, if you drafted Justin Herbert, you're playing Justin Herbert. So we're not going to go down that route. I think that's an obvious one. So he's not off the list. He's just not a guy that I want to highlight in this segment. But Austin Eckler, I think there's some concerns about his lack of volume in the running game and conceding some red zone touches, especially inside the 5. They've had the running backs have been relevant in that role too. So, but I think this is that bounce back game for him. I think with Keelan Allen out, the Chargers are 1-2. They got to get a win. I think when you are in a must-win situation, playing in a conference or the division, the AFC West and the AFC, which is loaded, I think you look at this and say, hey, we've got to get the ball to our best players, and our best player has and will be Austin Eckler if Keenan Allen is out. I think that's a no-brainer. They've got to find a way to get him more involved. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in that 12 to 15 carry range and getting 10 plus targets this week. So I think Austin Eckler is a must start this week.
I would add one, Coach, and I'm only doing this based off his performance last week and the fact that Keenan Allen is out again. I'm starting Josh Palmer. I feel like we saw him get five catches for 90 yards last week. I think he got in the end zone. Every game that we've looked at so far, you talked about concerns with the weather. Obviously, that's not going to be a concern inside the Texas Dome. So with that being said, I would feel confident putting Josh Palmer in. Your sits. Who do you have as sits in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I like it. So I've got Davis Mills. It's frustrating because Davis Mills is a guy you want to root for. He was taken in the draft. The whole situation with Deshaun Watson going on there and kind of thrust into a starting role before he's ready. But he had multiple 300-yard passing games last year. He completed a good percentage of passes for a guy that they took a chance on. But he's only completing 57% of his passes so far this year, and he's only got 660 yards passing, 3 touchdowns through the first 3 games. His yards per attempt is only 6.2, which is down over half a yard from last year. I think it was at 6.8. That's a little bit frustrating. You got to find a way to push the ball downfield and in that intermediate to vertical areas of the field. And they're just not able to do it. They just don't have that big field stretcher and the speed guy that they can do that with. But so I don't like Davis Mills and Dameon Pierce. I still feel like I was a Dameon Pierce guy coming out of college. I felt like he just wasn't used well in Florida. So I liked his talent, and I think he had a great opportunity when he landed in Houston. But we're not seeing the efficiency. I mean, he's only been targeted 4 times on the season compared to Rex Burkhead's 16. I think a lot of people thought Rex Burkhead was close to retirement, and here he is back leading the team out of the backfield. But Pierce has only got 46 carries for 182 yards and a touchdown on the season, and he's yet to find the end zone. And the Chargers ranked 10th in rushing yards allowed with just 103 a game. So just not a good matchup for him.
Spread, we got the charge. And one thing about Davis Mills, I think you talked about they don't have anyone who could stretch the field. They tried to address that in the offseason by drafting John Mechie, but unfortunately, that injury right off the bat, he's out for the year. He was definitely someone they thought they could do.
I like Mechie too.
Yeah. All right, spread. You got the Chargers at minus 5.5. I just can't see them not covering. I just can't see them continuing this kind of lackluster play. So I'm all over the Chargers today.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, again, you're in the AFC West, start out 1-2. This is, to me, kind of a must-win game already in week 4 to stay on pace in the AFC. I mean, look, the reality is if you don't have 10 wins in the AFC, you may not make playoffs. There's just too much talent on the AFC. So 9 wins may not be enough. You got to pull this one out. So I think the Chargers cover.
All right, moving on to our next one, an AFC South game. Tennessee Titans 1-2 at the Indianapolis Colts at 1-1. The Titans are going to be without LaRaven Clark, offensive lineman. Other than that, on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be out without defensive back Amani Hooker and a couple other linebackers. Colts, they're suffering from not having their safety Julian Blackman, but other than that, they don't have a lot of injury concerns this week. Start and sit for this game, Coach.
So I've got starting Jonathan Taylor. I think it's obvious, but I want to highlight that because he's not off to the start I think we all thought he would be after his week 1 performance. He struggled a little bit over the last 2 weeks, but he has been targeted 13 times. He's turned that into 8 catches for 43 yards. We're seeing a little bit of involved there. The Titans ranked 29th in rushing yards allowed with 145 a game. I think this could be another monster game like we saw in week 1. I think they've got to run this offense through Jonathan Taylor. And then Michael Pittman, in week 1, he had a great game. He missed week 2. And of course, he came back last week, had another great game. So I think you're seeing that Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman chemistry come into play. So I like Michael this week as well. I don't really like anybody on Tennessee. I mean, I think the obvious one is if you have Derrick Henry, you're starting Derrick Henry. But that's it. I'm not warm and fuzzy about the pass catchers yet. Much as I would love to see Treylon Burks, step up and be a bigger part of that offense. I'm still waiting for that breakout game. Hopefully that's this week, but I'm just not confident yet if I've got better odds playing him. So I don't have anybody on the Titans I feel like is a must start.
And it looks like the sits, you're just not going to have any interest in either one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan exploded in week 1 against the Texans with 350 yards, and Matty to an average of only 209 yards passing per game with 2 touchdowns, and he's got 3 interceptions already. So he's been sacked 10 times over the last 2 games against the Jaguars and Chiefs. He struggled against pressure. His yards per attempt have dipped for 3 consecutive weeks. They're not pushing the ball vertically like they did in week 1, so I think they need to get back to that with Michael Pittman back. I don't trust Matt Ryan, and Ryan Tannehill is just he's on pace to have his lowest completion rate since 2015. He's averaging just 215 yards passing the game with 3 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions. With the loss of A.J. Brown, I think they don't realize. First of all, I think we can all agree Treylon Burks was never going to be A.J. Brown. As much as we can say we like Treylon Burks, I think to say that he was going to step right in that A.J. Brown role. Again, vacated targets does not necessarily, you can't just assign them to somebody. You've got to earn those targets, and Treylon Burks just hasn't done that yet. So I just don't trust Ryan Tannehill, right now. And there's whispers about Malik Willis getting an opportunity here soon. They've used him in little short spurts, but he could be this could be the end of the road for Ryan Tannehill pretty soon if the Titans can't find a way to put some wins together.
All right, Tennessee is minus 3.5 favorite in this game. But that seems like a lot of points to me, and two teams that kind of struggled. Heck, it might be a 3-0 game. So because of that, I'm going to go with the Colts and take the points.
Yep, I'm right there with you, and you could be 100% right.
All right, moving on to another great offensive game. That's the Chicago Bears at 2-1 at New York Giants 2-1. Inactives, David Montgomery for the Bears, and we're gonna get right into the start and sit. If you drafted Khalil Herbert, or if you picked him up on waivers with the hopes of one day being able to start him, this is your week. I would assume he's got to be a must start for you.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert's a must start. Saquon Barkley. Those are the two guys to me. I like for both teams this week. I think it's going to be it's literally to the team that can run the ball the best, and then just hope that your quarterbacks don't turn the ball over. I did think Daniel Jones made some nice plays last week and get him outside the pocket against what was a tough Dallas Cowboys defense. But I feel like the Jones is doing, but I'm not ready to put him in a start situation. I think there's options out there, but I will say too. I like Richie James this week with just the rash of injuries. Now Sterling Shepard is out. Kenny Galladay hasn't stepped up. You've got the two, Wayndale Robinson and Kadarius Toney, again, not playing this week. So Richie James is going to have an opportunity. And I think Daniel Bellinger, the rookie tight end, now that he's healthy, we saw him get involved in the passing game last week, got a touchdown the week prior. I like Daniel Bellinger as far as a sneaky ad or in a deeper league. He's tight end 23, so that's a guy that I'm starting in deeper leagues for sure, or tight end premium leagues if I have a roster spot for him.
All right, so let's go to the sits, and pretty much if they're involved in the passing game, they're not playing this week, are they, Coach?
No, and look, the numbers are so bad. I won't. That passing game is on a historic pace to be the worst passing offense in the history of the NFL. They ranked dead last in total yards passing, which is 230 through 3 games. The next closest at 31 is Baker Mayfield's Carolina Panthers, but they're double that number. So it tells you how the Bears have been. They've only attempted 45 passes with 23 completions. So it can't get any worse. Darnell Mooney, if you drafted him, in 6, where he was drafted, and sometimes you get him as late as around 8, 9, but he's wide receiver 113. Cole Kmet, a lot of people thought would be a target monster this year. He's tight end 53. And if you understand tight end rankings, it's really hard to be tight end 53.
Yeah.
You have to almost just not play. But the snap count and the snap share, I believe he's tight end 53.
Let's get to the pick because we have got a few more games to go, and we're only supposed to be on for a few more minutes. So let's get to them. Who do you like in this game with the Giants having a minus 3-point spread?
Well, I take the Giants. Again, I think Daniel Jones has done enough last week against a very difficult Cowboys defense to show enough there. Power wins. So, of course, with that being the case, I trust Saquon Barkley both as a runner and a pass catcher this week as a dual threat back. I think they're going to run this offense through him this week. I think the Bears are going to struggle with that. So I've got the Giants winning this one. But
Yeah,
do we
I'm
really
right
care who
there with
wins this
you.
one? We do, but
No, so let's move on. We both are on the Giants. Here we go. Fun little game we'd like to call the Doug Peterson Bowl. Jacksonville Jaguars 2-1 at the Philadelphia Eagles 3-0. The Jaguars, I know when I told you this guy was not going to be playing, that kind of hit you. It was like a gut punch to you, and that's wide receiver Zay Jones is out. Another darling of a lot of people this summer as far as running backs that could possibly hit wouldn't cost you a lot to acquire him with Snoop Connor, but he's also inactive once again for the Eagles. You got Boston Scott out. Everyone's talked about that situation being a three-headed monster with Scott, Miles Sanders, and with little Kenneth Gainwell. So now it's only going to be two guys back there. Who are your starts and sits in this one?
So I think Jalen Hurts is obvious, and I can't give him enough credit. I mean, I picked the Eagles to win the division before the season started, which, as we know, as a Cowboys fan, hurts a little bit, but no pun intended. But Jalen's everything that you hoped he would be. From a passing perspective, he's thrown for over 330 yards for 2 consecutive weeks. He does what he does on the ground, so I think he's a must start regardless of who you're playing. James Robinson, love the story, coming off a major injury. He has dominated the touches in the backfield, especially in the run game. He's got 51 carries for 230 yards. say enough about the guy. He's got 3 touchdowns as an undrafted guy. So certainly a guy that I root for every single week. I think you can make an argument for Christian Kirk. I think he's that guy that does enough in terms of target volume to be relevant this week. And then as far as sits go, we got to get through these quick, but I've got Trevor Lawrence. I just don't like the matchup against the Eagles. They're the fewest points allowed to the quarterback position. I just don't see enough there from an offensive standpoint, as much as I love what the Jags are doing. You and I have talked about what we love that Doug Peterson's doing there as well. But I just think that Eagles defense is catching fire right now. And those rookies they've planted and the free agents they brought in and the guys they put on that side of the football, they're gelling together really well right now, and they're hitting their peak. So I just don't like Trevor Lawrence this week. And then Miles Sanders, he's another one that, he's earned the workhorse, and with Boston Scott out, you think there might be more opportunities there. But anytime you have Jalen Hurts that can take away some red zone touches, I just have some concerns there. His rushing volume or his rushing output has gone down for 3 consecutive weeks. So I just don't trust Paul this week.
To be honest, it might be a tough game to start many of these guys, even though you're going to start the Jalen Hurts, the A.J. Browns, and so forth. Because I just saw a tweet a few minutes ago. They got the tarp on the field, and it is coming down. So spread Eagles -6.
Sloppy.
Yeah. Eagles -6.5. I got to think with your love for the Eagles, I love saying that just because of your hatred for them when you talk about division rivals. But I got to think you're going with the Eagles, and I know I'm going with the Eagles. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jags cover.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it either. And I think just with you just said about the rain, and we knew this could be up to 35-mile gust winds, and I think that favors the Eagles. I think that offensive line up front is one of the best in the game. I think they've got 2 of the best tackle duos in the league, if not the best. I think you got Jason Kelce at center, and you have that RPO action with Jalen Hurts, but you also have his threat to run the football. Jacksonville are going to hand it off. Trevor Lawrence is not going to surprise anybody. Mobile, but it's being mobile and being a runner at the quarterback position. And Trevor Lawrence is mobile, but he's certainly not the runner that Jalen Hurts is. So I feel like that gives the Eagles an edge if the weather is a factor.
All right, let's move on to the next one. New York Jets at 1-2. At Pittsburgh Steelers, also 1-2. Inactives for the Jets, you've got Denzel Mims, you got Mike White, quarterback. But other than that, there's not a lot of guys we got to worry about on the offensive side for the Jets. And for the Steelers, Mason Rudolph is not playing, and he hasn't been active yet this year. So not much to really worry about as far as it comes with inactives. But one active that is different for the Jets is you get the quarterback back. You finally get to see what we have in Zach Wilson. Who are your starts and sits in this game, Coach?
So I've only got, 2 players from the Steelers. I like Deontay Johnson for his reasons. He's the volume guy in that offense. I mean, those numbers are not great, but I feel like George Pickens and Chase Claypool are still trying to kind of figure out who that wide receiver 2 is, as that volume kind of goes back and forth. But the one guy you can consistently count on from the wide receiver room is Deontay Johnson. And then Pat Freiermuth is a tight end. There's a lot of rumblings about Pat. If you could go out and trade, that's how crazy the Kyle Pitts talk was. After the first couple of weeks of the season, talk on Twitter about, hey, you could trade Kyle Pitts right now and pick up Pat Freiermuth in a first, right? And I think if you're just comparing Pitts and Freiermuth, I think it's more of a straight up trade based on just pure production in year 2 for both those guys. But I think Pitts is still the much better prospect long term. But Pat Freiermuth, I think, is a great play this week. He's the tight end 10 overall. As far as sits go, we'll make it quick. Michael Carter, he was out touched last week by Breece Hall. I think we're now finally starting to see that Breece Hall is going to be the guy moving forward. Michael always have a role, but if the rushing volume gets taken away and you're starting to split the receiving work, which everybody felt like Michael Carter might be the better guy there. But obviously, if you look at Breece Hall's production in college, he's very, very capable in the passing game. So I don't like Michael Carter this week at RB27.
Okay, let's get quickly into this because we still have a few games to go. So let's talk about the spread. The spread is Steelers at -3.5. I'm taking the Steelers. I just don't think the Jets and Zach Wilson's first game are going to be able to do enough to get the Jets a win at the Steelers.
I'm with you. Steelers for sure.
All right. Arizona Cardinals 1-2 at Carolina Panthers 1-2. This is an afternoon game, so start sits for the rest of these games. Not start sits, but inactives. We won't know until 12:15 this afternoon or 3:15, depending on what part of the country you're living in. But who are your starts and sits in this one, Coach?
So I'm starting Zach Ertz and Marquise Brown, and of course Christian McCaffrey. I think if you have DJ Moore, you're starting DJ Moore again, based on where you drafted him. If you have better options, dynasty leagues, a lot of guys make trades. You got a lot of young talent. You might have deeper wide receiver rooms based on the roster spots you have available. There are some better options for me than DJ Moore this, but I just don't trust Baker Mayfield. But my starts are Zach Ertz and Marquise Brown. They're the dominants in that passing game. You do get Rondale Moore back this week. Greg Dortch has stepped up. It's a high passing volume offense, so I like those two guys. But my sit is Baker Mayfield. I mean, I don't need to read off the metrics. I won't waste anybody's time doing that. Mayfield has looked awful this year, and he somehow made DJ Moore disappear, and I think that's hard to do. He's made Christian McCaffrey in the passing game somewhat disappear. He's never been a guy that liked throwing to his running backs. Now you got the best pass catching back in the NFL, and they're not using him. So
yeah.
Serious issues with Matt Rule and Baker Mayfield in the Carolina offense.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. You know, I was pulling for Mayfield, but it doesn't look like he doesn't look like the guy that should have been taken a number one overall pick a few years ago. All right, here we go. Spread. You got the Panthers at minus 1.5. I'm sorry. I think sooner or later the Cardinals offense has to get going, and getting Rondale Moore back in, and I'd like to see what they're going to be doing with him. But I'm going to go with the Cardinals getting the points.
Yeah, I'll go with the Cardinals as well on that one.
All right, New England Patriots 1-2 at Green Bay Packers 2-1. This is a game that a lot of people thought was going to be, pretty competitive going into the season. But with Mac Jones out, they've struggled offensively with having a defensive coordinator and a former special teams coordinator kind of running the show on the offensive side of the ball. Who are your starting sits in this one, Coach?
So I've got, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are playing. I mean, I think A.J. Dillon has not been as efficient on the ground as we would have liked, but he's still the guy that is going to get some volume this year. I like the matchup this week against the Patriots. Aaron Jones he's paid off big time. He's been more involved in the rushing game than I thought he would be with A.J. Dillon emerging late in the season last year, and what he's done in the passing game was outstanding. And I think you have to start the backfield if you've got either one of those guys. As far as the sit goes, Patriots passing attack. I mean, Mac Jones is out. Brian Hoyer steps in as the QB1. Jacoby Myers is still out. I don't trust anybody, in the passing game. This Matt Patricia experiment, Bill Belichick thinking I can just throw anybody in to call plays on offense and my defense will be good enough to win us some games is proven to not be the case. So I just don't trust anybody in the Patriots passing attack.
Let's get right to it. Let's get to our picks. Packers, I think that's a big number, minus 9.5. Even if the offense is struggling for the Patriots, I still think they're pretty damn good on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to take the Patriots and the points.
Yeah, so I went the other way. I think Aaron Rodgers is starting to figure it out. I think Romeo Doubs has really stepped up. You got Alan Lazard, who has not had monster numbers, but he has scored a touchdown in the last two games. And of course, with the rushing attack and the offensive line, I think figure it out. Defensively, tough for teams to move on him, and I just don't see Brian Hoyer finding a way to do that. But I get it. We're not saying the Patriots are going to win. You're saying, hey, I think they're going to be within 9.5 points. But I think Green Bay finds a way to win by, and I think this is probably a 32-21 type game.
All right. Hey, Jim 896, Flex PPR. We're getting ready to dive into the Denver Broncos 2-1 at Las Vegas Raiders 0-3. I'm looking at this, Judy, Lazard, or Josh Jacobs. For me, with it being PPR and Jacobs not getting much work out of the backfield in the passing game, I'm going to take Judy over Lazard.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't love any of the three. We just talked about Lazard. He's got a touchdown in the last two, but the target share and the volume in terms of targets hasn't really been there. I don't trust Josh Jacobs right now. So I think between those three, I agree with you. I think Jerry Jeudy's the best player. I think Russell Wilson's going to figure it out. I think what Jerry Jeudy can do after the catch in that, they can use him correctly. He can be a guy that can give you the explosive play. So I go Jerry Jeudy as well.
Hey, thank you so much. Let's just get right into this game real quick. Perry will be right there with you with that answer. But first, let's get into the game. Denver Broncos 2-1 at Las Vegas Raiders 0-3. Your start set, you've only got two. You got one start, one sit. Get in real quick there, Coach.
Yeah, so I've got Cortland Sutton as a start. I think he's become the alpha in that offense. He's got 19 receptions for 291 yards on 28 targets. He's on pace for 1,600 yards receiving. I think he's the guy that I thought he would be in this offense before the year when the debate was between Sutton and Judy. I think Sutton's proven to be that guy. My sit is Josh Jacobs, to Jim's point and Jim's question. I don't like the Broncos have only given up 240 yards rushing through the first 3 games and have not allowed a rushing touchdown. So I don't like Josh Jacobs this week.
All right, let's get to another question. Let's get into our pick real quick. Spread Raiders minus 2.5. We both do not think that the Raiders are going to go 0-4. We're both on the Raiders in this game. Perry Williams. I have CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson on my 2 flexes. Should I start Jamal Williams over one of those? If it was me, I would start Williams over Johnson. I'm not going to start him over CD.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Jamal get all the lion's share, no pun intended, of carries in Detroit. If they're within the 5-yard line, he's getting the goal line work, and he's going to be involved a little bit more in the passing game than he usually would be with DeAndre Swift out. So I like Jamal Williams too. Deontay Johnson, decent volume, but has yet to find the end zone. Doesn't have the big touchdown upside. I like Jamal Williams as well.
Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs 2-1 at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You've got Mike Evans as a start. Tell us why we want to go with Mike Evans after he's coming off suspension.
Well, I think he's pissed off, right? I mean, I think this is a guy that's got 8 consecutive years with over 1,000 yards. He's done it every year he's been in the NFL. He's now off start because they faced a tough team and defensively in Dallas in week 1, and then now you missed the game last week due to the suspension. So I think Mike Evans comes in this game a little pissed off. They get Julio Jones back. They have Chris Godwin who might play. I know it's a game time decision. I don't know what the update is there as we're doing this podcast, but I think Mike Evans bounces back with a big week this week and finds the end zone. As far as sits go, I'm not playing anybody that's a Chiefs wide receiver. I know it sounds crazy with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. The problem is not that there's talent. The problem is from week to week, it can change who is the higher volume guy. You've got outside of Travis Kelce is the only guy as a pass catcher I'm playing every single week. Juju leads the wide receiver room with 19 targets. MVS has 18, and Hardman has 11. But the only wide receiver in this group with a touchdown is McCole Hardman, right? So I just don't trust anybody in terms of the wide receiver position in City Chiefs. It's too hard to figure out who's going to be the guy on a given week.
Who do you like in this game, Coach? You've got the Chiefs with a -1.
I like Tampa Bay.
All right, well, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I've got Tampa Bay winning this game.
Yeah. I got the Chiefs. I can't. I don't know. I mean,
you're trying to keep
it's
that
hard
lead.
for me to go there. Yeah, well, there you go. We got to go separate. Hey, quick question. I don't know if you saw that McManus or Gay at kicker. I'm going to go with McManus. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's going to. Yeah, I'd go McManus there too. I think it comes down to the matchups here. I think the Broncos are going to be more likely to find a way to get into field goal range. So I think I'll take McManus on this one.
Okay, Monday Night Football. Los Angeles Rams 2-1 at San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we have no inactives. They won't release till tomorrow. 49ers are a -1.5 favorite playing at home. I'm picking the Rams, but before we get into your pick, just off the top of your head, who do you like and start and sit in this one?
I like George Kittle in this one. He played 91% of the snaps last week. He commanded 5 targets. He's got a full week of practice in, and I think there's an opportunity there. We know what he did with Jimmy G over the last couple of years, so I still think he's a top 10 tight end play any given week. So I like Kittle. As far as sits go, I'm not playing anybody that's in the Rams backfield. I think you're starting to see a 50-50 split between Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. So I don't know that I trust that yet until that kind of plays out. We don't know who's going to get the rushing volume, who's going to get the goal line carries, who's going to be the guy that's going to be more involved in the passing game. I think all that stuff from week to week is still up in the air. If one of those guys could be the consistent volume guy there, I think you've got a top 24 back. But the problem is we don't know who that's going to be from week to week. So I don't trust either one of those guys.
Spread 49ers 1.5. I'm taking the Rams in this one. And just a kind of little sneaky thing, man. I'm sorry. I think Allen Robinson is breaking out. I am not afraid to say I think this is going to be a 2-touchdown week for Allen Robinson.
Yeah, I changed my pick right before I've got the Rams as well, and I just think I just have so much faith and belief in Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and what they did last year, I do agree with you. I think hopefully we see Allen Robinson. I did not have Allen Robinson in my Scott Fishbowl lineup until Zay Jones went down. Now I'm like, hey, I think I got to put Allen Robinson in my lineup. So how can I say that I don't hope that he has a good week this week? So I'm with you there. I just think there's too much there with the Rams. I think Aaron Donald and what the defense can do with Jalen Ramsey and the leadership of that team. I think they find a way to get to 3-1 and come out with a win in San Francisco.
Awesome. Appreciate all your work you did to get ready for the show. James, Perry, we love the questions. Please keep them coming each week. Other than that, Coach, we've got 13 minutes to set 37 lineups for me. I know you got 13 minutes to set your own lineups. So have a
41
great week.
for me.
Good
yeah.
Luck. There you go. Good luck, everyone. And we can't wait to see you on Wednesday.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.